The next panel speaker, Madame Perevochtchikova. She is a hydrologist, engineer, and a doctor in hydrographic sciences from the Ecological and Physics Center from the State University for Hydrometeorology in Russia, St. Petersburg. She belongs to the National System of Researchers Level 1, and she has taught the following courses: City and Environment, Environmental Society, Basic Statistics, Environmental Impact, Hydrogeology, Environmental and Hydrological Services, Integral Management of Water, the New Culture of Water, Environmental Monitoring, and Environmental and Hydrological Services in the College of Mexico as well as UNAM. And now I give the floor to Madame Perevochtchikova. Thank you for this wonderful presentation, and I love this invitation. I'd like to thank the INEGI and the WAM for this wonderful forum and this space to be able to participate and raise comments we can make. And I feel that as an academic element,
we need information, we demand it, and we create it, and we process it. So then, let's see, we have the presentation on the screen. So then, the environmental deterioration, Susana mentioned a specific case at a national level. Mexico is not alien in the world scale, is not alien to this problem. And in the case of water, it is extremely important. Water is important because it is an input to know water. In what sense? Because it is essential that at a world level we are able to have this information in order to establish a society that is aware, reasons, thinks, and acts in terms of environmental conservation. This is a quote from UNESCO, but it is also essential to obtain a general landscape of the environment and carry out projections in the future, and based on this act in political terms to give an answer to this level of pressure. So in this sense, I thought, well, we can not only submit study cases, but also think of what has been done in Mexico in terms of research and the use of information. It is not a specific question for a case study. It is in general what this invitation led me to think. What research has been used in the problem of the use of information, and see if some ideas were not as crazy in personal terms stemming from the use of information. So in order to feel sure that the problem is not a specific problem of the country, but from Mikhail's presentation, I see that at an international level, we have exactly the same problems. And here I just show a brief list of some quotes I will be using during my presentation, underlining the water agenda, and also the information on water by Blanca Jimenez. I will base myself on some papers of the seminar of UNESCO in 2009 held on information and knowledge of water as a world priority, and also in a publication of the book promoting the coordination of Ursula Oswald, which is being sold outside. So that is what the list looks like. And the problem was not negligible. The problem is important, and in many aspects it coincides with certain personal observations stemming from the case studies, environmental studies, meteorological studies. So it's produced by a large amount of government and non-government organizations. It is submitted at different scales, just as Mikhail was mentioning, state level, municipal level, state level. And we find them in different sources, and sometimes there is no consistency. We lack protocols to produce them. Very often the government information is not updated. It answers to different objectives because several programs have different goals, and also the scale varies for this reason. It is heterogeneous, it's not exact, it's little used by government departments, and here there are conflicts between everyday life and political life. We change the priorities in national management, and this is not demanded by our societies. So here we have to control the information, but very often the society does not ask for the information that already exists. If we base ourselves in a future solution and the theoretical framework, this would take us to sub-management of the urban use of water, where we consider the flows, the anthropic nature, the national concept, and we require an interdisciplinary analysis, as was mentioned by in other papers, based in a division, territorial division, dividing the water basins, and we need structural measures, but all these mechanisms require information. And here we have the case of the pyramid. You are familiar with the pyramid, but it is worthwhile to mention that the primary data normally are considered for the use of researchers, the data that is processed for directors and analysts and for political information. But we have to examine what type of information we have in Mexico to be used by official sources and alternate sources. How many come from international, the institution at the level of alternate sources. We have academic institutions, NGOs, and also laboratories that are certified. The type of information that is produced, well, I break it up into statistics, printed maps and digital coverages and digital databases. Here I show the statistics that are produced at a national level. CONAGI, CONAGUA are some examples, and at the level of the academia, there is an enormous amount of research, and also through NGOs and consultants, because they also look for information and produce it. And another area is printed maps and digital coverages. In this case, it would be worthwhile to mention the effort of INEGI and this space, which deserves a good recognition on behalf of all of us, because INEGI in the last few years has continuously followed this line of work with the academia, interaction and enrichment on both sides, because this leads us to think that they should act, but we should also act. The exchange enriches us all, and databases based at an official level and at an alternate level, because different academic projects not only get official information, they also require the production of data at local scales. Very often they are case studies, and some are not grounded at a local scale. All this information is not grounded at a local scale. So now the problems in general detected by the review of sources of information shows certain differences in goals and purposes in our studies and also in our work. At spatial and temporary scales, updating the format of presentation, units of measurement, frequency of measurement, and periods of observation, estimating methods, and the maximum permissible limits. And this might represent a problem in their use, especially in the comparison and analysis of partial temporary analysis, systematization of data, building of indicators, especially conclusion of indicators and models at a local scale, flow analysis of underground water. That is a challenge in itself, integral analysis that will include social and economic factors. And finally, the scope analysis of public environmental policies. Here I would like to mention the obtention of data, but I will not stop at that because the problem to obtain data is very broad. And in general, we can say that there are certain types of complexities, the overlap of institutional activities at a national scale, and also in the process of getting information, we have barriers to get information. And, well, the institutions produce information, and there are voids in information. And this leads us to ask ourselves about the integration of the processes and the system of climate observation, already mentioned here. I leave you this table to think about its problems and its positive aspect. Vandalism, low payment to observers, systems of hydrological observation in terms of the amount of water that represents the greater problems, and the quality of water, which has many problems, and it's not only the distribution.
It also registers that will keep on being observed, and the decrease of observation stations as of the 80s. Okay, if we talk about the use of water, we could systematize it somehow. For the laws and standards, we use them to assess the public policies, and we also use them, or should be used, to produce and come up with actions and concrete plans. But the issue of the standards is a sectorization, lack of local information. There's no analysis on social impact, lack of consultations, lack of interinstitutional liaison, but the government liaison of the government with the academia. And in this case, for the design of or an evaluation of public policies. I'm not presenting the triangles like Michael did, but I do this type of comparison. What is it for the use of the information? What is it that is seen from the academic viewpoint, and what responds to the OECD scheme in terms of the implementation of the policies? When we talk about pressure, we analyze the situation. We devise responses to mitigate and reduce the environmental impact. Now, in this case, the issues on the availability of sufficient and efficient and reliable information is essential, and especially, and I go back to the local scale. Now, for the actions, the programs and plans, we have many plans and programs. We have already mentioned many of them, but at least in Mexico, and it's not only my personal observation, In recent surveys, we have seen that the problematic is that many plans are created without any diagnosis as a pillar, and only based on the requirements of the OECD. What are we talking about then? We don't know what information we should use, and I have no sound. Entonces, we need to think about the type of studies, the types of challenges, of academic challenges that we need to implement to solve the situation. So the information does exist, but even at the local level, in Mexico, it's not that bad. The index of knowledge of the water, and I'm sorry, we're having trouble with the sound. We are not doing that bad. We do have information, but we have the information, but there are restraints. It is totally scanty, it's too partial. It does not reflect the reality in many cases because of the indicators. It has not been updated. It is not known by the society, and it is not used in public policy. It limits the general knowledge of what I no oigo nada. Therefore, there are some challenges, and we need to overcome these issues to strengthen the system. We have to consider the staff, the methodologies, the resources, the standards, the technologies, modern technologies, and to keep in mind the traditions and the validation, to invest in the research, and not only in regard to the use of the data, but also monitor the efficiency of the public policies and the social impacts to promote the integral environmental education in every possible case, to prepare professional frameworks, and to train the decision makers to use the information, to detect issues, and to create the different scenarios and act in order to mitigate the environmental deterioration, to update the legal framework to strengthen the collaboration. I could give you an example. If, like in Argentina, what is it, how they really make them work at an institutional level. This has not been achieved in Mexico yet, and there's still a lot to do. But the communication, because of society, the government, and the academia, and to encourage society to demand the information and to use it to act. And I think that with this, I finish my presentation. Thank you, and I will be waiting for your questions. Thank you, Maria. Very interesting, your viewpoint, the viewpoint of the academia.